Pablo and the First Unitarian Choir, our AV team, and we send our gratitude to them and our healing thoughts to Emily, who's under the weather. So extra love to our AV team for working in absence of Emily, our technical production coordinator. And all of you, every one of you here coming together to create the church, to be the people to worship together. We need each and every one of you. I invite you to center yourselves as we prepare for worship. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door, and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral and contemporary lands First Unitarian now stands. I invite Grant forward to light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And I will invite all of you to help with the unison words. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Please rise in body and spirit one more time as we sing, Gather the Spirit.
My name is Grant Koss, and I use he, him pronouns. And a number of years ago, I was starting a new job, a teaching job, and was pretty much a newbie to what I was doing. And I put together a proposal for a new course in my department that could be taught throughout the college, and it received a lot of support from a lot of different individuals. I was excited by this, and as the process kind of went forward, found out that there was one person, a pretty kind of eminent person from another department, another area, that had an issue with the class. Actually did not want me to teach this at all. Really didn't want me to teach this at all. I had some support from my department chair, kind of my manager, but this went back and forth, and it evolved to a situation where we needed to go to the dean. I needed to go to the dean and kind of make my pitch and my proposal to him. So needless to say, I was pretty intimidated. I'm a newbie. I've only been there for about a year and a half. Many of us could probably identify with a situation like this at a job, and you've got this eminent individual who's kind of taking issue with this. And I went to my department chair, and I said, well, what should I do? And the take on it, he said, you'll be good. This is a really good idea. You want to do two things. One is, this proposal, multi-page proposal, put it together in a one-page summary. Just have your one-page summary down. The second thing is just let this guy go on. Let him kind of talk, whatever. You'll kind of like suss him out. You figure this out. So, all right, okay. I went into the meeting. My department chair came with me. Very supportive. This other individual was there. We got there with the dean, kind of like, we go into the situation. They kind of recap this argument that's been going on, and the dean listens, and then he turns to me and says, well, what do you think, Grant? What do you think of this situation? I said, I think this is a good class. It's innovative. These are good ideas. I think this is going to really help our students. And I've got this one-page summary. And I can kind of show out to the whatever that. And I'm doing this, and I hand it around the table to these 5 different individuals, and this guy from the other department, the eminent guy, kind of like just goes. Now, I'm in a department of communication, another department, but his comment I can remember specifically was, I don't need to learn about the First Amendment. This is a class in free speech. The First Amendment and the Constitution from a speech teacher. And it was just at that moment, kind of, he showed his hand, if you will. That it was not about my idea. It was not about this proposal. It would be good. It was about me. It was about this lowly little kind of like guy doing that. And something inside me, I just said, I stood up, not stood up, but like looked up at the table and I said, who do you think you're talking to? Where did you get off talking to me like that? This newbie and the old dog, kind of like, hey. And it was at that moment, the whole dynamic of a meeting, we've been in situations like that it just turned. It just turned. The class was accepted. The dean was all for it. It went forward. And it makes me think that, as we come to church, one of the reasons why we come to church is we go and we get the counsel of those individuals who have experience, who know about the power plays and how to deal with that type of garbage and help us through those things. Thank you. Oh, thanks.
My name's Amanda Graff. I'm the director of our religious education program, and I would love if the children, any children that are with us this morning, would like to come down to the carpet for the Time for All Ages story. And if you want to stay where you are, that's okay too. But I see a few kids out there that I'm really happy to see here this morning. So, my story today, and make your way down anytime if you decide to. My story today, some of you may be familiar with it. It's the story of the frog and the scorpion. Do you know that story? Some folks out there? So in the story of the frog and the scorpion, there's a frog who lives on the banks of a river, and there's a big forest that he lives in, maybe a jungle, but there's some kind of disaster on the jungle. Maybe it's a big in the jungle, maybe it's a big fire, and the frog needs to leave his home and go across the river to the other side where it is safe. And as the frog is getting ready to swim across the river, a scorpion comes up to him. And the frog's like, And the scorpion says, "Can you give me a ride across the river? The fire, I'm afraid, and I need to escape." And the frog thinks, I don't think so, because he knows that scorpions, what do? They sting, right? And he's got very delicate frog skin. So he says, "No, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't give you a ride." And the scorpion says, "Please." And he says, "No, you're going to sting me." And the scorpion says, "Why would I sting you? If I sting you while we're going across the river, we'll both drown." So the frog thinks, okay, that makes sense. And he invites the scorpion to crawl onto his back, and they start making their way across the river. But then halfway across the river, what do you think happens? The scorpion stings the frog, and as they're both sinking under the water, the frog says, "Why did you sting me? Now we're both gonna drown." And the scorpion said, "I'm so sorry. It's my nature. It's my nature to sting." So, this story for me brings up some questions of trust. So if I know that a person is kind of maybe not very kind, maybe a bully, and I trust them to be kind to me, I wonder what will happen. I wonder what might happen. So I have two more versions of this story, all right? So the next one, the frog is back on the bank, the forest fire's happening, the scorpion comes up to him, "Can you give me a ride?" The frog's like, The scorpion's like, "Please." And the frog says, "Okay, wait here." So the frog hops into the forest, grabs a thick banana leaf and puts it on his back and says, "Okay, climb on board." So this time the frog's swimming across the river. He can feel the stinger of the scorpion try to hit him on one part of his back and another part of his back, but the banana leaf is too thick and the stinger can't get through. So when they get to the other side, the frog climbs up on the beach and the scorpion climbs down and he says, "Oh, thank you so much for taking me across the river." And the frog says, "Well, you're welcome, but you tried to sting me." And the scorpion says, I'm so sorry. Stinging is my nature. And I'm glad you thought to protect yourself. And so we both survived. All right. Version number 3, you ready? So we've got the frog on the riverbank. The scorpion comes up. "Can I have a ride across? There's the fire. They're both in danger." The frog says, "Definitely not. You will sting me." The scorpion says, "I will not sting you. We'll both drown if I sting you." And the frog thinks, This time hops off into the jungle, grabs 2 banana leaves, puts one on his back, invites the scorpion to climb up, and hands the other leaf to the scorpion to hold as they, with his tail, as they ride across the river. So not only do they make it across more quickly because there's the scorpion who's kind of holding a sail, right? And they're catching the wind and they're getting across. And when they make it to the shore, the scorpion climbs down, puts down the leaf, and embraces the frog. "Thank you," he says. Doesn't sting him. "Thank you," he says. "I thought that the only way for me to survive was to sting. And now I've learned something different. I know that survival can also be about working as a team. So thank you for teaching me something new." And the frog and the scorpion were good friends till the end of their days. May this story unfold in your hearts until we are together again.
We are in the midst of our capital campaign, Building for Tomorrow, and so I invite up Jane Tuttle, longtime member, to offer a testimonial.
Good morning. Jane Tuttle, she, her. I was privileged to grow up in this church, and my father was on the building committee when we got really time to come and design this wonderful edifice, and he was chairing the building committee when they did the fundraising for the addition, which was a few years later, and he wrote this poem on the occasion of that fundraising effort. Seems very timely. I'll read it now. From David Tuttle. "Our commitment is deep. We celebrate this bursting morning of the freer flight of spirit in a building balanced to serve the needs of all people. We celebrate the anticipation of even more jubilant and reverent expression in honest space and light. We celebrate the warming promise of the hearth, the discovery, and windows that let us look from inside in. The great gallery doors, the wonderfully expressive brick arches. We praise the very process of architectural conception, of lay participation, of skillful building, yes, of stretching to pay. The stretching leaves us richer. Our commitment is deep." And that is what inspired me when my good friend Glenn Cook called to visit, to really reach deep, because this building has been an extension of my home, where I was raised with UU values, and this place is really special, and I think we all need to support this effort. So that's what I've got.
Thank you, Jane. I invite you now to please join me in the spirit of meditation, reflection, and prayer. I invite you to settle into your body and into our sacred space, into this sanctuary. Gently bring your attention to your breath, to the sights and sounds of this present moment, even if that is just the sound of the hum of this room, the sound of my voice, and the sight of the underside of your eyelids. Let us hold silence here for a few moments. Into our silence, I offer this prayer from the Reverend Rebecca Savage. Great mystery which grounds us and surrounds us, divine reality known by many names and beyond all naming. Eternal mystery that holds us close, receive the meditations of our heart today. We come together in this quiet moment to unify our hearts again towards the clarion call of our time. May justice and equity guide us to a great connection, a greater truth. Our part is just as great, to approach dismantling systems of oppression within us in order for us all to be free. To know that when I cherish and tend to the divine spark within me, when I know in my bones that I am worthy of love and whole just as I am, that there is greater potential for mutual understanding and care. Love is not scarce. Our ability to extend compassion and grace can be. I place my hand over my heart and know I can feel the spirit of life within me. I invite you to place your hand over your heart and feel the spirit of life within you. The spirit of life is divine within us. The spirit of life is here. This is the beginning of justice and equity when we go within, in order to be of service in our communities and in our world. May it be so, and blessed be. We enter now into ritual to bring what is on our hearts and lay it on the altar of community and spirit. Honoring the complexities of life, I invite you to bring to mind whatever is on your heart, whatever grief or growth or gratitude is alive within you this morning. Perhaps it is a combination of all three. Online, you are invited to share in the chat what this is, and here in the sanctuary, you're invited forward to light a candle at one of the altar tables. There is a basket of electric candles in the back if you prefer to use those, and if you would like an usher to bring you a candle, please simply raise your hand. And I will ask Grant to begin by lighting 2 candles, one for Haven Chady, whose grandfather passed away on Wednesday, and another candle for the city of Grand Rapids, where another young black man, Daquan Johnson, was shot and killed by the police this week. Our hearts cry out for justice and truth. May we now share in this ritual of community care and witness to one another's hearts. all that we hold in our hearts for ourselves, for each other, and for the world is held in this community and by the larger love that holds us all, always. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. The musical meditation today is gathered here. Let's sing together. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. One more time. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near.
Is, and all that our church does is made possible by the time, talent, and treasure that we give to our shared mission. Members and friends support this congregation financially through recurring giving, and on Sundays we also give through our shared collection. As part of the spiritual practice of generosity, 50 cents of every dollar given now to our offering will go to the Worthy Now Prison Ministry Program of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. A program of the largest UU congregation in the country, this ministry connects people who are incarcerated with UU materials providing support, hope, and liberation, and we invite you to give generously. Using Church Center is the easiest way to give, but if you aren't set up with the app yet, you can also give by texting GIVE and the amount you would like to give to the number on the screen, or in the offering baskets that will now be passed. So it's in the spirit of abundance and generosity, the offering will now be given and humbly received.
Pablo. A reading for this morning is the poem In Broken Images by the English poet Robert Graves. He is quick, thinking in clear images. I am slow, thinking in broken images. He becomes dull, trusting to his clear images. I become sharp, mistrusting my broken images. Trusting his images, he assumes their relevance. Mistrusting my images, I question their relevance. Assuming their relevance, he assumes the fact. Questioning their relevance, I question the fact. When the fact fails him, he questions his senses. When the fact fails me, I approve my senses. He continues quick and dull in his clear images. I continue slow and sharp in my broken images. He in a new confusion of his understanding. I in a new understanding of my confusion. From the earliest Unitarians who found no evidence for the doctrine of the Trinity in the Bible, or the earliest Universalists who saw no evidence for the doctrine of eternal tormenting punishment, our faith tradition has been indebted to a practice of skepticism, of this questioning, of trusting more the broken images, of not accepting the truths handed down from past generations without rigorous investigation. From Abner Kneeland, who was a Universalist minister until he questioned the need to believe in God at all and became the last man jailed for blasphemy in America in the 1830s, hopefully the last, to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who questioned the ritual of communion and encouraged a direct relationship with the divine. The most traditional thing we can do as Unitarian Universalists, it seems, is to reject tradition and try something new and vibrant and innovative instead. From the signers of the Humanist Manifesto, whose skepticism led them to a rejection of supernaturalism, much like Abner Kneeland before them, a century before them, and into an embrace of human potential and goodness. To the leaders of our movement in the early 21st century, who suspected that Unitarian Universalism could hold more room for more kinds of spiritual or reverential language. Our faith has called us to be self-reflective, to grow and to innovate, and to find that arises from authentic and balanced skepticism. And to be clear, ours is not the only tradition steeped in skepticism. Indeed, much of the roots of Western philosophy can be found in the skepticism of the ancient Greek philosophers, especially, of course, Socrates, who may have been the first recorded person to be sentenced to death for being too annoying. That is, for asking too many questions. But also, he exemplified the advice to not believe everything that you think. His only real claim was that he knew nothing, and neither did you. And so his Socratic method of questioning, recorded in the dialogues of Plato, would leave his conversation partners exasperated as he systemically deconstructed their claims to knowledge of morality or the will of the gods or the nature of justice. Now, another gift, I think, that comes to us from the ancient Greek philosophers is the concept of virtue as an ethical framework. The important thing to know about virtue ethics is that it is not about using logic or some kind of science to determine the most ethically correct action in any given situation. It admits that life is much messier than all of that. But what we can do is that we can strive for moral excellence, for virtue, by striking the golden balance between two contrasting vices. So, the classic example of this is that courage is the virtue to be found when one is not too cowardly and not too foolhardy. One must be brave enough to act even while afraid, but not foolish enough to act without considering the risks. So if skepticism is a virtue, then the vices that we are trying to avoid are gullibility on the one hand, and what I would call contrarianism on the other. Skepticism is not about disbelieving everything that we see or hear as a knee-jerk reaction, but it's about understanding what makes compelling evidence to accept a claim. Returning to the Greek, the word skeptic comes to us from the Greek word skepsis, which just means examination, inquiry, or consideration. It is not about disbelief as a rule, but it is about investigating what others are saying is true and investigating even what our own minds are telling us. There's a difference between saying no to everything and answering everything with a question. Take our story this morning of the frog and the scorpion. In the original version, it seems that at first in the first version, the frog was not skeptical enough of the scorpion. He had that initial skepticism, but then trusted the answer that, well, the scorpion wouldn't hurt the frog or else they would both drown. But on deeper reflection, I would say that he was too skeptical of himself, too skeptical of his own understanding that the scorpion was likely to sting him. In the second version, in the second and third version, the frog acts more as a virtuous skeptic. He spends enough time reflecting on the situation. And most importantly, I think, is not so much his skepticism of the scorpion or of himself, but skeptical of the idea that his only options were to say yes or no to what the scorpion was proposing. By being skeptical of the scorpion's framing of the situation, he was able to imagine an alternative possibility. And in fact, this is where the virtues of skepticism and hope overlap, because hope, as distinct from optimism, is grounded in the conviction that we don't know the future, and neither does anybody else. So we cannot say that it is definitively bad, the future will be bad, like the pessimism says, and we cannot say that it is definitely good, like optimism does either. And so our skepticism of both of these claims can lead us to being grounded in the present moment, open to the infinite possibilities of life, empowered to take actions that shape those possible futures for the good. This is exactly why I am compelled to preach the gospel of skepticism, because when understood properly as a virtue, this approach can lead us to be grounded in hope, truth, and love. And it's an important religious value. It's important to our tradition of heretics and blasphemers down the ages. And I think it's an important political and ethical value necessary for safeguarding democracy and liberty from the clutches of tyranny. And speaking of tyranny, I do want to lift up one of the 20 lessons from Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, a very small, short, and accessible, but impactful book. Lesson 11 in his book is investigate. He writes, figure out things for yourself. Spend more time with long articles. Subsidize investigative journalism by subscribing to print media. Realize that some of what is on the internet is there to harm you. Learn about sites that investigate propaganda campaigns, some of which come from abroad. Take responsibility for what you communicate to others. In this chapter, Snyder also makes the provocative claim that it is your ability to discern facts that makes you an individual, and our collective trust in common knowledge that makes us a society. Now, I admit that I am at first skeptical of this claim. I don't know if I fully agree with it about that's what makes us an individual, but I do believe it is important to think about how each of us as individuals have immense power and therefore immense responsibility to discern what is true. We must use this power wisely in service of truth. Snyder finishes the chapter by saying that each one of us bears some private responsibility for the public's sense of truth. If we are serious about seeking the facts, we can each make a small revolution in the way the internet works, for instance. If you are verifying information yourself, you will not send on fake news to others. If you choose to follow reporters whom you have reason to trust, you can also transmit what they have learned to others. If you retweet only the works of humans who have followed journalistic protocols, you are less likely to debase your brain interacting with bots and trolls. And of course, we might add AI to the bots and trolls these days, and this book was published in 2017. We might say repost rather than retweet, as Twitter is not quite the ubiquitous the central place for the central platform that it was before Elon Musk's takeover of it. But I will leave a discourse on AI and the bots and the trolls to Reverend Eileen's sermon in our Pulpit Swap series next week. But this has been an important piece for me in engaging how I engage with news, media, and truth and reporting in our world. What I've tried to do is curate the journalists specifically that I follow, knowing that I follow real people and quality journalists. And following those journalists directly, I think, is actually one of the best things that we can do to be part of that skeptical practice. So we know where the news is coming from and we trust the source, which is even further than just saying, oh, well, the New York Times or the Washington Post is saying this, their legacy media, it must be true, when Washington Post is now owned by the owner of Amazon and has laid off half of their journalistic staff in recent days. Here's another way that I've been thinking about it that has been helpful to me. Much like the inherently anti-fascist phrase, "make me," which desperately few of our institutional leaders have embraced as their response to the Trump administration's bullying behavior, I think we would all do well to adopt another anti-fascist phrase to keep on the tips of our tongues: prove it. Whether that's in response to official statements from the Trump administration, from his enablers in Congress, or to stories, claims, and facts and figures that you see from those legacy news media organizations. Again, the skepticism I'm talking about, even as I'm saying to be ready to say prove it to any claim that comes across your path, the point is not to have this as a knee-jerk reaction that absolves you of any labor and puts all the effort and labor on somebody else to actually investigate or do journalism. What I'm inviting you into is a spiritual discipline of holding back acceptance of claims until we have satisfied a higher threshold of credibility. And again, this goes for ourselves as well. Don't believe everything you think. If you read something or you think something or you hear something, and then you can stop and ask yourself, well, wait a minute, prove it. Let me make sure that I actually believe that this is verified and a credible thing to believe or thing to say, especially before sharing that information with others as truth. The good news is we are not alone in this. If we know to trust ourselves, our own senses, and our own moral conscience, and we do the hard work of discerning who else we can trust, we can build communities of real trust and real skepticism. I was listening, as some of you did, and if you haven't, I encourage you to listen to the recent episode of Evan Dawson, where Reverend Sherry and a couple of other local pastors talked about their recent experiences traveling to Minneapolis. And Reverend Dan Brockway, the lead pastor of Brockport First Baptist, reflected on the reality that it's hard to ignore the evidence of one's own eyes. And that is the thing that gives him hope, because so many people are documenting what is happening in Minneapolis and in cities across America, that people are being woken up by what they see. The Trump regime, of course, claims that things are happening that are absolutely not, like the supposed dangers of immigrants, or like the claims that Operation Metro Surge has ended and ICE agents are leaving Minneapolis, when people on the ground living in Minneapolis will tell you that they have not left. And the regime denies the truth of what is actually happening and being done to resist it, denying the truth that Renee Good and Alex Preddy were defending their communities through peaceful observation, denying the truth that ICE agents have been lethally violent towards those two and many others, denying the truth of what is going on in concentration camps, and trying to avoid oversight from duly elected leaders. It is hard not to think about the quote from 1984 by George Orwell: "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final and most essential command." But in contrast, our faith, Unitarian Universalism, tells us to, borrowing the words of the Apostle Paul, prove all things and hold fast that which is good. This is, I think, what Robert Graves is talking about in his poem. Mistrusting our images, questioning their relevance and fact, our senses grow slow but also sharp. We develop a closer relationship with truth, even as, or especially because we don't come to a conclusion of absolute certainty. Through skepticism, we can avoid, or at least avoid a little bit better than we otherwise would, the pitfalls of self-righteousness, narrow-mindedness, and just plain error. The truth will set you free. Facts will overcome lies. Our hearts can be open to the possibilities, but only if we cultivate the virtue of skepticism. So please join me now for our closing hymn. Please rise in voice, body, and spirit for Blue Boat Home as we cast our questions into the deep. Please join us for Connections. Unfortunately, the nature-based spirituality program is canceled due to an illness this morning. The Inquirer series is in room 119, just right there. Amanda will be talking about faith development for children and families, so anyone interested to learn more about our religious education program, please attend that. The board is offering a program on governance policy in our church. That'll be in the Susan B. Anthony Lounge. The Reproductive Justice Ministry is meeting. Upstairs, we've got the Democracy Group, the Unitarian Buddhist Fellowship, the Bell Choir, Parenting Matters, and I'll be meeting with the Soul Matters facilitators gathering, and we even have a parent information session about K1 OWL, Our Whole Lives Comprehensive Sexuality Education Curriculum. So please join us in community, in connection, and join us in extinguishing the chalice as Grant comes to extinguish our chalice. Please join me in the unison words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May you go forth slow and sharp in broken images, questioning everything, holding fast that which is good, ever seeking truth, which is justice, which is beauty. Go in peace. I love you. May it be so.